I'm trying to mention another thing here.
What's
That
that?
the last email I have to bring up here is from Max, and I can't pronounce his last name. It's something like Asperger's, like Cartman's episode of South Park, where he was taking the patties and sticking them down his back of his crack of his ass, and then flavoring them in a tent, and then putting them on the grill, and they became a big hit. That was the title of the episode, was Asperger's. But nevertheless, it's something spelled like that with a SHCH in the end or in the middle. Anyway, hello, Max. He would like to share his experience from attending the October 27 SmackDown in Milwaukee and the crazy events that unfolded that night. Apparently, both his mother and he are cult members and regular listeners of the program. He listens with his mother, and he's a grown adult.
Hi, Mom.
So they got multiple generations of cult members in the family. So anyway, back to Friday, he says. So we got incredible seats, fourth row, right behind the announce table. It was worth every penny. He apparently loved the show. But he says during the taping of the second episode, the announcer had us do something odd. While they were setting up the ring for something, they wanted us to cheer as loud as we could for about a minute. Then they also had us boo as loud as we could for the same amount of time. I was wondering if y'all knew what that was for. Piping in crowd noise? Question mark. Bingo. That's what Vince was doing that back in the 90s. He would have Finkel go out, whoever it is now that serves as their Finkel for these things, and fire the people up and say, hey, we want to hear how enthusiastic you are, and we want to get your faces on TV. And I stole that and did it for Smoky Mountain Television because we weren't sweetening audio, but in the more rudimentary TV production days, the way that you covered shit up that you didn't want to air, whether somebody whiffed something or, completely missed, or it looked like shit, or they bobbled it, or somebody, whatever, some horrible bad camera switch, you would get the crowd screaming and yelling both on audio and video with the floor cameras so that you could cut in a various excited response, and then you'd do the same thing for booing or whatever and say, we want to get all your faces on TV and all that shit. So that's but what they're doing now is purely for they have that particular arena, that particular crowd. They're not just using fake crowd noise from 10 years ago anymore, right? They're obviously getting it from the arena every night like that. You see what I'm saying, Brian?
Yeah, it reminds me of that story. And I heard someone a friend of mine or someone I used to work with had a similar story from when they did the Let's Go Mets Go video in 86, but it was a story somewhere. Maybe it was like an old Observer yearbook. Some fan was in the crowd for a WWF taping when they were doing the Coco Beware video for Pile Driver. And he was up on the apron singing and the fans are screaming. And then they did take two and take three. By the end of it, the fans just hated Coco and hated the song. They kept having him redo it, and the fans, you want the enthusiastic fans, but you kill their enthusiasm after a while.
And it wouldn't take Coco 5 run-throughs of that song to kill the enthusiasm. But anyway, and lastly, still from Max, listen to this story now. After our fun evening of wrestling, we started our roughly hour drive back to Madison, and on the way, we stopped to get food to eat when we got home. About 5 minutes after I got back on the highway, 20 minutes away from our house, I see a flash of a deer, a flash of light, crunching, squealing, smoke, and then silence. I immediately open the door and realize we're disabled in the fast lane of the interstate. As I'm doing this, I'm also yelling for my mom, and thankfully she responded and I helped her out of the car through the driver's side door. I did everything I could to get the car out of the road, but it was stuck. My mom and I both escaped with only scratches. Her head was fine, but I'm 99% sure I got a decent concussion from hitting that fucking deer at 60 miles per hour in a Prius. After that, we stood and watched as so many cars almost hit my car. Thankfully, nobody did. And eventually a semi stopped and helped traffic flow until the police came. A group of guys heading home from a hockey game stopped and ended up giving us a ride back to Madison. On the way back, we talked to the fellas, and they ended up knowing a local wrestling promoter that I know. It's crazy how fast life can come at you. 1 minute, you're having the time of your life at a wrestling show. The next minute, you're in the middle of the highway with a deer flying into your Toyota Prius. Well, there you go.
Wow.
Max, we are glad that you guys are okay. And fuck your Prius. I'm worried about the deer. You did not once say how the deer managed to, because a Prius and a deer might be 50-50, right? Because that little thing wouldn't be powerful enough to pull a greasy string out of a cat's ass, much less run over a deer.
Have you ever hit a deer?
I've never hit a deer. I would be completely mortified if I did so. I once in 1994, unfortunately and inadvertently ran over a bunny rabbit, and I didn't want to drive for a week. He ran right out in front of me. And it was the little neighborhood deer or neighborhood bunny.
So it was a deer.
And no, I had deer on the brain because of you just said it was a little neighborhood bunny rabbit that I would see run down the side of the road whenever I came in from my Smoky Mountain shows. And then suddenly one night, for no apparent reason, he darted right out in front of me out of nowhere when I'd never even seen him. And I couldn't avoid it.
I once hit a deer coming back from an ECW show.
Well, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Oh, I wasn't driving. I was in Georgianne Macropolis's minivan, and it was me and a bunch of other people coming back from like the Lulu Temple in the middle of Pennsylvania. And like 1 a.m, whatever it was, she hit a deer and it totaled her minivan.
Oof.
And then we had to, like at 3 a.m, somehow she rented a Lincoln Continental. And she drove us all back into the city.
She rented a Lincoln Continental at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That was the only thing they had that could fit whatever it was, 6 people.
Who was they? Where did she rent a car at 3 o'clock in the morning back then?
I don't even remember, actually. That's a good question. She somehow got one, and it was a Lincoln Continental.
Oh, well, now you didn't actually see the rental process. Just somebody brought Georgiana Lincoln Continental. I believe that.
It was a rental place. I don't remember if it was a Hertz or in anything else. Budget?
Yeah,
I don't know who else exists in this field.
Avis, they try harder.
They're out there too.
And then, But
yeah, the deer totaled the car, and then the deer got knocked into the woods, and we never saw it again.
Well, now you didn't even go down there and see if it needed help.
I don't want to. No.
Well, you hard-hearted.
We needed help. We had a totaled car.
But at least you were up walking around.
What am I going to do if the deer's hurt?
Well,
nothing.
You're gonna call for a helicopter to bring a veterinarian to euthanize the poor thing.
I'm gonna have an awful vision.
A veterinarian airlifted into the fucking scene to take care of a situation like that. Call the goddamn Department of Wildlife.
For the rest of my life, I would have had that vision in my head of that deer just down there, all fucked up from Georgianne's minivan, still breathing.
Looking up at you going, why?
Yeah, why would I want that? I can't do anything to help the deer. Better to just stay up here and talk to Eddie Goldman.